Good morning, students. Today we'll be taking up the second lesson of your book, which is We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together by Gordon Cook and Alan East. This is the story of a businessman who was also interested in the voyages, right? You liked to take voyages in the sea, rough seas. So he had planned with his family, that is his wife Mary, his son Jonathan, who was 6 years old, and his daughter Suzanne, who was 7. All four of them wanted to take a voyage to duplicate what James Cook had done almost 200 years ago. James Cook, as you know, was a sailor. He was also in the British Army. Uh, he was the one who had taken the round the world trip 3 times, right? And in these 3 times, he was successful in completing 2.5 rounds, but on the third, he was killed by the people of Hawaiian Island, right? This is the map of the uh, route of Captain James Cook's voyage, right? The red one tells you about the first, the purple about the second, and the black about the third. And the dotted line that you see will tell you about the route taken by the crew members of uh, James Cook after his death. So this was a round the world trip which he had taken. Now the author, along with his family, wanted to duplicate this, which was very difficult. So he spent 16 years, right, uh, owning the skills, the seafaring skills. That means sharpening or practicing a lot about the seafaring. That means the art of sailing. For 16 years, both of them, the author and his wife, they practiced in the roughest of the seas. If they would have to go to the roughest sea, they would be able to make decisions. They would be able to face those rough seas, right? So for 16 years they practiced, and then they were ready in 1976. In July 1976, they started their journey from Plymouth, England, and this journey was 105,000 kilometers. A very long journey, about 1 lakh kilometers. It was not to be completed very early. It was a 3-year planned journey, right? It was a voyage that they had dreamed of. So they started their journey in their ship that they had made, and the name of the ship was Wave Walker. It was 23 meters long, 30 ton in weight, and it was wooden hulled, right? It was made of wood. So it was professionally built, and they started their journey in July 1976. The first leg means phase. The first phase of the journey was completed very smoothly. There was no problem at all. They sailed to the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. Now this sea, you can imagine, it was calm sea. So they had no problem. But now they knew that they have to enter into the Indian Ocean, and that is going to be a very rough sea. So they thought that they had to have someone who would be expert in facing those rough seas. So they had 2 crew members. One was the American Larry Vigil and the other Swiss Herb Siegler. They were very well trained. So they accompanied the author and his family to one of the world's roughest seas, that is the southern Indian Ocean. Right now, when they started their journey from Cape Town, until Cape Town, it was very nice, but as they started on the second day itself, they started facing the strong gales. Gales means strong winds, right? And for the next few weeks, these wind blew continuously. But for the author, these gales were not a problem. The problem was the waves, which were very high. You must have seen the in the pictures or in the movies, the waves which are so high in the sea, they are dangerous for the ships. So they were very high, about 15 meters, as high as their mast. Right now, on December 25th, they were 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Right, and December 25th is Christmas. So they had planned everything. Everything was set up there. There was a beautiful Christmas tree with everything, decoration and everything. They celebrated the Christmas on the ship. Right? Then came New Year, and there was no improvement in the weather. But they celebrated New Day also. Right? It was New Year Day, and hoping that the weather would improve. Right? The weather would change on the next day, and on January 2nd, the weather did change. Right? But it was for the worse. The gales were very high. The ship was difficult to be sailed. So what they did, that when they faced a storm, they put up a storm jib. Now you would like to know what is a storm jib. Right? There are many parts of the ship with which you should be aware of. This is the picture of a ship. Right? The parts of a ship, you can see. Right? The straight wooden bamboo, that is the mast. Right? Now it is made up of steel. Right? It is harder now. Then the big one is mainsail, whereas a smaller one is called jib. Right? A forestay. It's a storm jib. It's a smaller one. Right? You think about this picture, because you will be seeing the names of different parts of the ship throughout the lesson. So you should remember what actually the parts of the ship are. First, we will see the storm jib, which is a smaller sail. Right? A smaller sail, so that one doesn't face the strong winds. Right? The speed of the ship is controlled. Okay, so now they were moving with the storm jib with the speed of 8 knots. Right? Knots is one knot is 1 nautical mile. That is a measurement in the distance in the sea. Right? Now 1 nautical mile is about 1.85 kilometers. Right? So now they were making only 8 knots. So the speed was very slow. Now as the waves came, the ship used to ride over the waves. Now it was so difficult. Okay, and all the people on the ship, they were very much afraid. They were afraid that the ship would capsize, because the waves were very high. They were like mountains. right? The waves are compared to mountains. They were very high. Now, to save the ship, what they did was they all the cargo that was there, it was double lashed. It was tied with a rope, right, twice. And then there was they had their life raft drill, right, how to save themselves if the ship capsizes. That is, drill is practice. And then they attached the lifelines. Lifelines, you must be knowing, it's a string attached to one's body, right? A string attached to one's body, so that if there is a situation where one gets into the water, he would not sink, because the other end is tied to the ship. Okay, so they were having the lifelines, and they were wearing the oil skins. Oil skins is this, right? This is oil skin. That is, it's similar to a raincoat, but better than that, because they would not get wet. Okay, if the water splashes on them, they are not going to get wet. So on 2nd of January, they faced the problem, and then they started practicing all these things. And then they waited. They had no other option. They had lowered the storm jib also, so the speed was less, and they were waiting for something better to happen. But the first indication of the coming disaster came at about 6 p.m. with a complete silence, right? The silence seemed as if it was very inauspicious, as if something very bad was going to happen. What actually happened was that the wind dropped. Okay, the wind dropped, and the sky suddenly grew very dark. There was a roar, right? And there was a growing roar, right? A loud sound. Everything grew darker, and they thought that it was a dark cloud. But it was not a cloud at all. It was a very huge wave, right? A very high wave. And the height of the wave was very frightening, right? The crest was very frightening. Crest is the top of the wave. It was very frightening. So all of them were very frightening, and suddenly what happened? That wave splashed on the ship. And then you can imagine what would happen. It seemed as if there was an explosion, because the wave was very strong, right? Okay, and then it was difficult for them to maintain their balance on the ship. The author went inside the water, right? And he thought that he is going to drown. When he went inside the water, when he went inside the wave, and along with the wave, he went into the water, into the sea. And he thought that he was about to die. And as he was about to lose his consciousness, he felt very peaceful. You know, death is a very peaceful thing. You don't have any worries. But suddenly his head popped out of water. It just came out of water, right? And he could see that his ship in front of him was capsizing, right? His mast almost horizontal, right? It was horizontal. It should be vertical. It was almost horizontal. Okay? Then there was another wave, right? And it made the ship upright. And suddenly he felt a taut in his lifeline. Taut means you can say stretch, a pull. And then he came on the ship, right? He pulled himself on the ship. But when he reached the ship, on the ship, the waves were still coming and it was tossing him like a rag doll, right? A small doll made up of clothes, right? Old clothes, that is rag dolls. He was tossed here and there, and then he had a broken teeth, then he had broken ribs, there was blood in his mouth, and a very pathetic condition, right? Somehow he reached the wheels, and when he reached the wheels, he hung on the wheels to be prepared for the next wave, right? He was trying to make himself ready to face the next wave, and he had no idea where the ship was going. And suddenly from the front hatch it threw open. Hatch is an opening, a small opening. Usually in the ships, on the boats, you can see the openings from the where the people from the basements, they come up on the boat. So Mary appeared there, right? And she started shouting, "We are sinking," right? The ship is full of water. Now the author told Mary to take to the wheels. That means you take to the wheels and I'll try to fix the ship. Now both the crewmen, Larry and Hub, they were busy pumping the water because the water had entered into the ship, inside the ship. Now the author, he went and he reached the upper bunk, right? And he saw his children. He asked them, "Are you all right?" Okay. The children said that yes, we are all right. His daughter said that my head hurts a bit. Okay. But he did not have time to look at the children. So he went away from there, taking the hammer, the screw, and the canvas to fix the cracks in the body of the ship. And then he took the waterproof hatch covers and he used the hammer and screws to fix all those holes in the boats of the ship. Now both the crewmen who were busy pumping the water faced some problem. There were so many things floating in the water, and that had entered into the pump. The toys, the cutlery, the plates, the bowls, the food, everything was floating in the water, and it had entered into the pump and it had choked it, right? So now the pump was not working. Now if they don't pump out the water, definitely the ship was going to capsize. So he had to find an alternative, and suddenly he remembered that in the chart room there was a substitute pump. Chart room is a room where there are charts and maps and all those instruments that are kept, where one goes for calculating the distance of the direction, looking for the path. So in that particular room there was a pump, right? This electric pump. Now he took out that pump and it worked. The pumping out of the water started again, right? Now he tried to fix the radio and give the mayday calls. Mayday calls are calls made by either the aircrafts or the ships when they are in danger during their journey. But there was no response to this mayday call made by the author. There was nothing in this remote area of the sea, right? Now when he saw his daughter, she was very badly hurt. She did not only have a swollen head, but she had two big enormous eyes, black eyes. She had hurt herself because the ship was tossing, and that is why the children were also uh, being hurt. So the father asked, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" She said, "I didn't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all." Right? This happened on January 2nd. Now, this is an important event, an important date where they faced a lot of problem. Everything crashed. The side boards of the ship was broken to the keel. Keel is the lowest part of the ship. Okay, so everything was broken, and the author was trying to fix it with the help of his two crewmen who were pumping out the water, and Mary, who was at the wheels, continuously at wheels, and the two children who did not tell him about the pain that they were going through. Then came January 3rd, right? The pumps were working and the water level was under control, right? Now they were taking 2 hours rest in rotation. That is, one person took rest, the other 3 were working, right? So 2 hours rest in alternatively. Now there were a problem about the food also. Whatever they had, the canned food, they had it, right? Now it was almost 15 hours since the wave hit wave walker, but now it was very difficult for them, and they had realized that if they continue to sail in this boat, in this ship, they would not be able to make up, right? They are not going to reach their next destination because the ship was not in a good condition. So now the author thought of finding islands, right? He saw that there are 2 islands, but they were very small islands, and in this vast southern Indian Ocean, it was very difficult for them to find out. They were like pinpricks in the ocean. Pinpricks means when you prick a paper, right? When there is a small hole that is made by a pin, you can't find it in the paper, right? It is very difficult for you to find where that pin had pricked. Now these 2 islands were like pinpricks in the vast ocean. That means very tiny islands in that vast southern Indian Ocean, right? Now on January 4th, they were continuously pumping the water. They were trying to find the island, they were continuously pumping the water, and they were just waiting where they could find the island. Now they had something to eat, and about 4 p.m., right? At about 4 p.m., again the weather worsened, right? The black clouds began to build up behind the ship, and within the hour the wind started blowing, right? It was very harsh wind that was blowing, and for the next day, that is up to January 5th till dawn, the weather was horrible, right? It was situation had worsened. Now the adults knew that they are not going to survive, but it was very difficult for the children to take up. You know, there are difference between the mentality of children and the adults, the way that they look at the situation. There is a difference of maturity level, but these children, these 2 children, Suzanne and Jonathan, they were very mature, far beyond their age, right? In the evening, when both Mary and the author were sitting hand in hand, thinking that their end is near, now these children came, and his daughter had prepared a beautiful card, right? There was a caricature on the top of the card, and inside it was written, "Here are some funny people. Did they make you laugh? I laughed a lot as well, right? And there was a message, oh, how I love you both, right? So this card is to say thank you and let's hope for the best. Now, this card, which was given by the children, it was made by Suzanne, and it aroused a new hope in the author, and he was determined to somehow make it to the island. Right now, he checked and rechecked his calculations. Right, he had used the sextant. Sextant is an instrument which is used to measure the angle between the sun and the horizon, so that you can find out exactly where you are in the sea. So he used all his calculations. His compass was not working, and he did not have enough instruments, so it was very difficult for him. But even then he calculated that if they steered to a course of 185 degrees, they would find an island called Il Amsterdam. Right now, if they found that island, they would be able to survive. And if they went at the speed that they are going now, they would be there by 5 p.m. Right? He told this at about 2 p.m. that they would reach at about 5 p.m. And then, with a heavy heart, he knew that it will be very difficult for them to reach the island. He went to sleep. Right? And when he slept at 6 p.m. around, he saw that there were two tousled head. Right? Tousled head is the unkempt hair that is on the head. Two tousled hair were in front of him. They were of Jonathan and Suzanne, his children. Right? They had there, and they were asking for a hug. Right? She said, "Can I have a hug?" Right? Both of them wanted to hug their father. Now he was surprised. Why am I getting a hug now? She says, because you are the best daddy in the world and the best captain. But the author was surprised. He knew that it is 6 p.m. and if they have not still reached Il Amsterdam, they must have missed it. Right? So they were 1 hour beyond the time. He said that, yes, I'm a good father, but I'm not a good captain today because I could not take you safely. Right? He said, no, you are, because we have found the island. They found the island and they said that it is in front of us. The author was so happy that he rushed to the deck and he saw the island. It was a black piece of volcanic rock with little vegetation. And he says here, it was the most beautiful island in the world. It is not the most beautiful, literally. It was the most beautiful island because it had saved the life of the author and his family with his two crewmen. Right? So now they anchored off for the night, and the next morning all the 28 inhabitants who were on the island, right, it is inhabited by 28 people, which is a French, who were the French scientists, because it is a French scientific base. All those 28 scientists, they reached there, and they welcomed all the people of the ship, that is the author, his family, and the two crewmen, Larry and Herbie. Now he says that after this, the most important thing was to get his daughter well, and she was having a lot of problem because her eyes were now just a slit. Right? It was completely closed. She was so badly hurt that it seemed that it was just a slit, and it was about 6 operations which she had to undergo to remove the blood clots in her eyes. Right? And there was the family of the author, who was always besides him, that helped them survive. In this chapter, you'll see the attitude, the courage shown by the adults as well as the children, right? How matured behavior of the children was there. Okay, how they were very mature. These are some word meanings, right? I will also give this to you on WhatsApp. Okay, can you see this? Now there are some words which are related to sea and ship. I've told you in between the lesson: hatch covers, hatch, chart room, sextant, knot, hull and bunk. There is the description of the ship, right? Name of the ship, the description of the ship, right? Then the 2 crew members and the journey. Okay, and the important dates, this you have to pay attention to, right? These are the important dates: July 1976, then December 25th, January 2nd, January 3rd, January 4th, and the dawn of January 5th, and then January 6th, right? These are the important dates in the chapter, right? The most important thing is how the courage of the children, which was shown by Jonathan and Suzanne in the chapter, that is very important, right? And one more thing, the optimism shown by the children when Suzanne gave the card, right? And Jonathan said that we are not afraid to die if we are all together. This gave a hope to the author, and he tried his best to save everyone. This is that optimism helps to endure the direst stress that we have. It is our attitude which makes us overcome even the most stressful situation, right? Even the most negative situations that we face in our life, our positive attitudes takes us through it, right? So this is about the chapter, and we'll discuss if you have any problem on WhatsApp. Thank you.